Indeed, it first started with the Ghana Cedi. It was some sustained stability, and then we saw a record appreciation against the US dollar. We also saw the GDP expanding significantly in the first quarter of this year. Then we also heard about Fitch rating saying that based on the conclusion of discussions or rating more of a great improvement to their creditors, they are reviewing our credit rating status to a B- with a stable outlook.
What if I told you that the moment Ghana's currency became the strongest in the world, instead of applause, it triggered a warning from the International Monetary Fund? That's exactly what happened. Ghana's Cedi outperformed every other currency on the planet, even the US dollar, and almost immediately the IMF stepped in, accusing Ghana of manipulating its economy. Now pause and think about that. A stronger currency means cheaper imports, lower inflation, and relief for millions of ordinary Ghanaians. It's the kind of progress any country would celebrate. But instead of praise, Ghana got a lecture. The IMF claims the Bank of Ghana was pumping money into the market to artificially strengthen the Cedi. But here's the real question. Why is an African country's success suddenly a problem? Why should the IMF even care if Ghana's economy is stabilizing? Former African Union Ambassador Dr. Arikana Chihumbori Kwao put it bluntly. The IMF, the World Bank, all of them thrive on African nations failing. Their success depends on our failure. Harsh words. But look at Ghana and ask yourself if she was wrong. For decades, Africa has been told to reform, borrow, and tighten its belt under the IMF's supervision. Ghana followed that path. It borrowed. It endured tax hikes. It lived through inflation so bad that daily life became unbearable. Under former President Akufo-Addo, debt ballooned and the economy nearly collapsed. Ordinary citizens paid the price. This was the mess President John Mahama walked into when he took office late last year. A bleeding economy and a nation exhausted by years of austerity. His response? A dramatic reversal. In one bold move, his government scrapped the IMF-backed taxes that had been suffocating households, like the mobile money levy, VAT on vehicle insurance, and a 10% tax on lottery winnings. The message was clear. Ghana was done playing by the IMF's rulebook. And it worked. Businesses started breathing again. Families felt a bit of relief. Confidence slowly returned. And then came the breakthrough. Ghana's currency shot up, defying every expectation and earning the title of the world's best performer. Instead of applause, the IMF issued a warning. Why? Because Ghana is proving it can win outside their control. This isn't just about numbers, it's about power. For decades, the IMF has been the gatekeeper, deciding which nations rise and which ones remain shackled. Ghana's success challenges that entire system. And that's why this moment is bigger than Ghana. It's a test for Africa. Can a nation break free from IMF prescriptions and chart its own path? Or will the old system find a way to pull it back down? To understand why the IMF reacted so sharply to Ghana's rise, you need to see the bigger picture. This isn't just about one country's currency. It's about a system that's been in place for decades. A system designed to keep nations like Ghana dependent. Look at the history. After World War II, institutions like the IMF and World Bank were created, supposedly to stabilize economies and promote growth. But in Africa, their record tells a very different story. Time and time again, nations seeking help were handed loans tied to strict conditions. Policies that cut social spending, removed subsidies, privatized state assets, and opened markets to foreign competition. These were called structural adjustments, and they promised recovery. Instead, they left nations weaker. Industries collapsed under foreign competition. Inflation soared after currencies were devalued. Jobs disappeared. And yet, every time an economy faltered, the answer from these institutions was the same. Borrow more, cut deeper, and comply. Egypt is a perfect example. For nearly a decade, it followed the IMF's rulebook to the letter. Loans kept flowing in, but so did poverty. By 2024, Egyptians were paying triple for bread. Fuel prices had doubled, and their currency lost half its value. Instead of prosperity, IMF reforms pushed millions further into hardship. And now, Ghana stands at that same crossroads, but it's choosing a different path. President Mahama's decision to remove IMF-backed taxes was more than a policy change. It was a statement. Ghana would no longer strangle its citizens just to meet the conditions of foreign lenders. The government scrapped levies that drained households, from the mobile money tax to the vehicle insurance VAT, arguing that people needed breathing room, not more pain. The results were immediate. Small businesses, once crushed by fees, saw relief. Families struggling under inflation found some respite. And with renewed confidence, the Cedi began its unprecedented climb. But the IMF couldn't accept it. Their response was swift. Warnings about currency manipulation and demands to let the free market decide. But let's be honest, when has the market ever been truly free for Africa? For decades, these same institutions dictated terms that shaped African economies to serve global interests, not local ones. Dr. Arikana's words ring louder than ever. Their survival depends on our failure. It's no wonder she was sidelined for speaking out. Because if more nations start thinking like Ghana, this carefully maintained order begins to unravel. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Ghana's fight is Africa's fight. If it succeeds, it proves that African nations can chart their own course without bending to IMF conditions. But if it stumbles, the old narrative that Africa needs Western guidance to survive remains intact. Here's the question that's been hanging over this entire story. If IMF policies have failed Africa over and over again, why do our governments keep signing these deals? The answer is simple but painful. They need money. When economies collapse, when foreign reserves run dry, leaders often see no choice but to turn to the IMF and World Bank. And every loan comes with strings that tie Africa's future to Western-controlled institutions. These strings aren't just about budgets or interest rates. They reach deep into our politics, our culture, and our sovereignty. Look at Uganda. After it passed an anti-gay law in 2024, the World Bank froze billions in funding. Like it or not, that's how power works in this system. Loans become leverage, conditions become control. And then there's the economic trap itself, what experts call neoliberal conditionality. It's a fancy term for policies that hollow out economies, cutting government spending even on health and education, selling state assets to private bidders, removing subsidies that keep food and fuel affordable, and floating currencies until they crumble. These measures aren't designed to lift nations out of poverty. They create a cycle of dependency that keeps them coming back for more loans. History proves it. From the structural adjustment programs of the 1980s to today's reform packages, the results are the same. Weaker local industries, higher poverty, and mounting debt. Each loan is supposed to be a lifeline. Instead, it tightens the noose. Ghana's recent success is the first real crack in that system we've seen in years. By scrapping IMF-backed taxes and focusing on its own growth strategies, it's proving that another path is possible. And that's exactly why the IMF reacted so sharply. Because if Ghana wins on its own terms, it sends a message to the rest of Africa. You don't need their permission to succeed. But breaking free isn't easy. It requires more than bold speeches or one strong currency. It means building new alliances, strengthening regional trade, investing in homegrown industries, and refusing loans that come with toxic conditions. It means prioritizing African solutions over Western approval. Egypt's collapse shows what happens when you stay in the system too long. Ghana's rise shows what happens when you dare to step out of it. The choice facing Africa couldn't be clearer. Here's the uncomfortable reality. The IMF and World Bank were never built for Africa to win. Their history, their policies, their results all point to the same conclusion. They exist to keep global order in balance, even if it means holding Africa down. So, where does that leave us? Do we keep walking the same path, signing loans that bury us deeper? Or do we take Ghana's lead and start fighting for real independence, economic independence that no global institution can touch? This isn't just a story about Ghana's currency. It's about the future of an entire continent. And that future depends on whether Africa is finally ready to walk away from a system that was never designed for it to thrive. What do you think? Should African nations finally break free from the IMF and build their own financial future? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Support this work by hitting the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss these deep dives into Africa's fight for true economic freedom.